Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game Podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 147. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the coaches, athletes, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank everyone who's liked, shared, and commented, who has subscribed to the show and continues to give us suggestions and supports us because all that support allows us to continue to bring on expert guests and highlight more individuals in the strength game, just like our guest today. Also want to thank our sponsors. Family owned and operated since 1976, Samson Equipment has been specializing in full turnkey weight room build-outs from planning to installation. Based in Las Cruces, New Mexico, Samson provides professional weight room solutions for those looking to lead the way in advancing our strength conditioning profession. Coaches relied on Samson as their top resource for all their weight room renovations because they provide the finest materials and design, product customization, and the most reputable customer service in the business. If you're in the market for elite level strength equipment, weight room renovations, or upgrades, be sure to check out samsonequipment.com and see how Samson has been delivering clients a long-lasting yet affordable product for over 4 decades. Also want to thank our sponsor, Cerberus Strength. Owned and operated by active lifters, Cerberus is trusted by the top strength sport athletes and lifters in the world. Cerberus's wide range of products are made by athletes for athletes, truly living up to its moniker, made by the strong for the strong. From sandbags, training gear, and supplements to lifting straps, barbells, knee sleeves, and much more, Cerberus Strength provides the highest quality strength products on the market, designed and manufactured to help you defeat, destroy, and devour your competition. If you're in the market for the highest quality strength conditioning gear and strongman equipment, be sure to use promo code strength_game at checkout to receive 10% off your next order at cerberusstrength.com. Also want to thank our sponsor, Sport Kilt. Founded in 1995, Sport Kilt is the very first company to begin making casual kilts in the USA. Taking the traditional kilt concept, they crafted a casual kilt using modern materials that is perfect for Highland athletes and casual kilt aficionados alike. Sport Kilt offers an option for people looking for a tartan plaid kilt that is less expensive, comfortable, lighter, and durable, yet machine washable. Make the ultimate Celtic statement by checking out the full selection of kilts and stylish kilt accessories at sportkilt.com. And be sure to use code TSG to save at checkout. And in this week's episode, I am joined by Chad Dunn. Chad is the owner of Move Human Performance Center and Physical Therapy, in addition to being a sports performance and exercise specialist specializing in catastrophic injury recovery. Based out of Chandler, Arizona, Move Human Performance Center and Physical Therapy was founded in 2017 by Chad and his wife, Jackie. With local community ties, their goal was to help establish a local training and physical therapy clinic where everyone from the uninjured to the able are able to reach their physical performance goals and make new goals. Move Human Performance Center offers up-to-date services and programs for physical therapy, sports medicine, and sports performance from athletes to spinal cord patients and everyone in between. Prior to opening the doors at Move, Dunn was an exercise specialist at Rehab Plus Physical Therapy for over 20 years. In addition to his coaching and athlete development responsibilities, Dunn is an inspirational speaker and now author, with the recent release of his book, Mind Over Virtually Everything, 10 Codes to Transform Your Life. The book shares the 10 codes that fueled his own transformation and now shape the culture at his Move Human Performance Center and Physical Therapy Clinic, where elite athletes train side by side with individuals learning to walk again. He also has been a youth counselor, mentor, and life coach at Rehab Plus since 2008, working with athletes around the local area, keeping kids active and off the streets or in good homes, engaged in sports, and encouraging them to work hard no matter what life throws at them. A former BMX racer, skateboarder, and extreme sport athlete, Dunn is active in and out of the weight room, making training more than just a workout, but a lifestyle. Chad's hobbies include any extreme sport, playing with his English bulldog, watching people succeed, and hanging out with his wife Jackie and their three kids. Like I said, I'm excited to have him on the show today. So, with all that said, let's get in the game with Coach Chad Dunn. What's going on, everybody? Today we've got a great guest. Going back over to the West Coast over there, we got Coach Chad Dunn on the show. How you doing today, man?
Doing very good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to get you on today. I know Coach kind of put you in a box. There's so many other things that you've done throughout your career and you're doing now. Exercise scientist, like a specialist, owner and co-founder of Move Human Performance Center and physical therapy, an illustrious career of yourself in athletics and everything like that, extreme sports. We're going to dive into all that stuff, but I know there's many chapters of your life. We're going to take it back just a little bit just to kind of see how you first got started into kind of training, sports, and then what's kind of led you into what you're kind of currently doing day to stay active yourself as an individual.
Sure. Well, everything always starts off with the identity. And so, 6 years old, I got my first BMX bike and I started racing BMX bikes. So, I grew up as an extreme sports athlete. I lived the life on the edge. I liked fear. I liked the adrenaline. The higher the jump, the faster the track, the better it was, as a young kid. Nowadays, you don't see kids out riding their bikes anymore. So, that I was part of the generation, that was in the pioneer stuff about the early 80s, was when all this was starting to come around. And that's when we all used to go out in the neighborhood and ride the bikes and make your wooden jumps and do whatnot. So I started off racing BMX bikes. First race, I ended up getting second. So I got a little thrill of chasing somebody and also getting the competition behind. I did that for many years, moved out to Arizona when I was 10 years old. The racing scene changed. Obviously, with sunshine, you get better races and you get more races. In Colorado, I had the snow. We had indoor tracks where we used to race on concrete. It was like a big warehouse. And then we had wooden jumps that we would go over. So it was kind of cool to experience that at the time. Completely different than what, nowadays these indoor tracks are all still built with dirt. They haul it all in, they do it all. So I was very fortunate to get the differences on the sports on that side. State, I was number one in the state, obviously just chasing points as everyone does, age group stuff. I was number one in the age groups, got on the national circuit, started racing nationally and just competing, traveling, just like club AAU basketball is nowadays. Everything is magnified, but we used to go to a different state, different city every weekend and compete with the best of them all. So growing up as a young kid racing BMX bikes, my dad was a bull rider, football player, and wrestler. So the hard life, country life creates hard men, fall down, get back up, get back on the horse. That was kind of one of the fun things. And we kind of related with BMX. If you fall down, my mom wasn't going to run out there and make sure she gave me Band-Aids, or she's not going to give me the Gatorade if I was thirsty. You're going to have to go fend for yourself and do this stuff. So you learn toughness at a young age. I got into football when I was getting into high school. I started playing Pop Warner football. Loved hitting people. I played linebacker, was quarterback. So obviously, understanding the play calling, being smart, ball awareness. The only problem, I was 5'2", 119 pounds. So when I got to high school, I was ended up getting my dick knocked in the dirt. You played with all these guys that were much bigger and whatnot. So junior year, I was a backup. I did not want to quit, but I was always used to being a starter. I hated watching the game from the sideline. So I knew I had much more to offer. I went home one day. My dad said, "Well, why don't you start wrestling? It's mano a mano, man against man." I thought that's kind of fun, but I don't want to roll around with the other sweaty guy. I don't want to put the singlet on, or whatnot. So all the image things were more of the past, more of the vision there. When he said you could physically beat the shit out of somebody without getting in trouble, I thought, shit, wrestling sounds fun. So I did wrestle. Senior year, junior year, I did great. State place, did whatnot. Senior year, I was going out. I got a dislocated shoulder. Had to go do some therapy. At that point in time, I thought to myself, man, I can see myself doing this. This is kind of fun, helping athletes come back from injuries. It wasn't much of the training side, it was more the therapeutic side. So kind of caught my eye my junior, senior year. Again, football, wrestling, got into this career. Went to ASU. Exercise science is what I was studying with a minor in Spanish. Obviously from southwestern Arizona, it's always good to know Spanish. So I started taking the dual language. And at this time, I had a friend that was a trainer for the Cruz Azul in Mexico. So I thought, well, this could be cool. I could go international. I could start maybe doing some sports performance stuff down in Mexico. That was my original plan, was I was going to go to Mexico and do sports training, therapeutic stuff, exercise science stuff with my buddy down there. After being held twice for ransom and kidnapped twice, no harm, no foul. It was just on the competitor team from Puebla going against the Cruz Azul. So they had to take away the trainer just to get the upper hand or the competitive advantage in sport, right? So he said, change of plans. I'm coming back to the U.S. So I was going to ASU, exercise science, do all that stuff. I got a job with a company called Rehab Plus. Warren Anderson, the guy I worked with, he was kind of the pioneer of a lot of the functional training in the early 80s. He was out there with Mark Verstegen. So we had Mark Verstegen that came in with Exos and API. He was another kind of pioneer in the whole field. So we were very fortunate to have him in our backyard here in Arizona. I learned from the best. Warren Anderson, my mentor, man, he was the best. Donovan McNabb, Eddie George, Barry Sanders, Peter Warwick, Ron Dugans. We had all of the top of the top of the top at the very beginning. Again, this is late 90s, so I'm talking about 98 now, 99. That's when my career started, doing exercise science, training, and again, working with physical therapy. So my identity of the BMX racer obviously led me to being an athlete, led me to doing things. My injury as a wrestler got me into the career that I am today.
That's awesome. It's kind of cool to see just the trajectory of everything and just being able to like transition smoothly between sports and like find in individual sports, extreme sports, and then move. And like you see like how different areas have like a different abundance of sports. And when you're that young too, like you're invested in something, but only so much, like your world is just so small. So you
Yeah,
go
you don't
somewhere
know.
else and it's big, and then you move on to the next thing, and this area's got football. It's like, all right, well, maybe football's, I'll run it till its course and then find wrestling. And then it's cool that that's at that point in time, like the career path kind of just falls in your hands. And I mean, like everybody else, I think a lot of coaches, you fell into that like, oh, I got injured. Maybe I didn't reach my maximum potential. I wish I had this when I was younger. Like I want to still be involved in athletics. And there's like all these different kind of careers that start to spurt up, whether it's actual strength conditioning, athletic training, physical therapy, rehabilitation. Like you found one of those and you kind of ran with it. Like you, what was that your first initial experience like working with Rehab Plus? Because you fell in love with it and you kind of realized how important it was from that shoulder injury that you sustained like in wrestling in high school. But what was kind of the first impression of like getting around athletes and seeing therapeutic, that seeing the rehab side of it that kind of got them back to the sport they love?
Starting off, you have to be a fitness instructor, right? So I was working at a health club, right? Running the floor, cleaning the machines, trying to help people lose weight, and training the weekend warriors, or you're training people in the health club. So, that was a job that I had also at the same time as I was getting into doing the therapy stuff. But I thought I could get, just from what I learned in school and learned in college, I thought I could get everybody to lose weight. Here's the formula. You got 220 minus your age. Here's your maximum heart rate. Let's get in our fat burning zone and let's take off and go. Well, next thing I noticed is that nobody's losing weight. Well, I cannot control the choices for them when they're outside. They're training with me for an hour and a half, and I don't know what they're doing the other 22 half of the hours, what they're eating, what they're putting in their bodies and everything else. So at that time, I realized that maybe the fitness stuff really wasn't for me, because you're helping people, but they're not helping themselves. So now when I got to Rehab Plus and I was working with the guys over there, these are some badass athletes that are coming in, and they came in with a mission. They came in with a purpose. They came in with a goal. Everything driven by money, as it is nowadays, but this was to try to keep a contract. This wasn't just about getting a contract or getting an NIL deal. This was about making sure that you're getting paid whatever your true potential is. So going over there, I saw another sense of discipline. It was really disciplined. Athletes are much more dialed in at that time. Most of them. Now we've had some of them. Richard Dumas, that was with the Suns. He was there for a long time, and he had some issues on and off the court. But like, how can you not there's a lot of money coming your way. How can you not be disciplined enough to do this? So you saw at that point in time, or I saw at that point in time, I saw the separation, even just in the high school athletes, the ones that wanted to play at a high level D1, Power Four, Power Five conference. I saw which ones were locked in to do that. The ones that are just looking to play at a D2 level, the ones that are playing at JUCO level, you saw the work ethic. So everything is really backed by what is your character and what's your work ethic. And that was what I kind of got attracted to. I like the sports stuff, that was just huge because again, you're making them pursue something greater than what they are doing currently, and I think the pursuit of greatness is key. So that's the sports. On the injury side, working as exercise phys and working in a group because we did it all together. Coming back from an injury, there's only one way to go, and that's up. How many people don't take their rehab seriously? Well, it's almost like the athletes that don't take their off-season preparation or the preseason, in-season, they don't take it seriously, and then they wonder why they got hurt. Or they wonder why they didn't get better. So again, everything at that time, everything's kind of went hand to hand. The injury stuff, the training stuff, there's got to have a meaning behind it. Have a meaning. So I was driven more towards that more than the fitness. So I knew that I wanted to be in the athletics, or I wanted to be some type in the rehabilitation field somewhere.
Yeah, that's great. That's a good way to put it too, because you're right. A lot of the fitness industry, if you're not working in, even if you're working in a team environment, like private sector, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, training is just the smallest aspect of their day. You can extend it as much as you want. You can have a grinder session and go 3 hours, but the majority of their day is still spent without you and under without your supervision. So you're trusting in them to be as disciplined and motivated to continue all the things that make them great, like in the facility, in the weight room, with their training and recovery, and take that outside when they go home. And it's a lot more difficult with that because it's in their hands ultimately, and they have to care about it more than you. With rehab, it seems like a lot of times, and you can kind of tell me because and speak on this more, but when you're kind of like restricted and you're injured in a lot of things, a lot of your normal everyday activities are like you're mobilized, like you can't do as many things. So your rehab is way more serious and stringent, and you focus on that more because everything that else that happens outside of like the scrutiny of a physical therapist or a practitioner is very like kind of robotic. Like you can't, there's parameters to be able to do
Yes.
stuff because you don't want to get hurt again. And you kind of keep focused because you're on that path. Does that kind of
Yeah.
fall in line with how it looks?
Yeah, no, it does because everything with the injury is it's step one, step one, step one, step two, step two. So you have to conquer one before you go in. There's protocols that have to happen. I've got 0 to 3 weeks for the ACLs. I've got 6 weeks to 12 weeks, and then I can do laterally everything. So there's certain guidelines that you have to go through. But those are just timetables that they set on everybody. You cannot progress, especially now with all the force plate testing that we have, all the handheld thermometer, everything now is measured. We got quantitative data all day long. Before it was just a timeline, but then how many people got to that timeline and they weren't ready to progress to the next phase of the protocol? We didn't have the stuff that we have now. You're using your eyes as your best tool back in the days, which still to this day we have all the Bluetooth, we have all the handheld thermometers, we have all the vault systems here that we do for our sports performance testing, also our return to sport testing from injuries. But me personally, I can see it with my eyes. Some of my cohorts and everybody else that's here, it's good for the younger generations to see the numbers because that's what they grew up with. Um, Athletes, it's the same thing. We can see coaches, we see which ones in the weight room. When you're in college, I can't, and because you've been in there, not every one of those athletes are going to give you 100% of their effort every day. You might have 11 of them, but those 11 ones, those are going to be your starters on offense. I got 22 people that are really grinding down. They're perfect. I got 11 on offense. I got 11 on defense right now. I've got 60 kids that are screwed around in the back. Well, 30 of them are going to be on the sideline, holding the water for everybody else and cleaning up the towels and moving the equipment because they're not locked into the weight room. So again, when you hold yourself accountable, rehab, you have to hold yourself accountable. You have to. So I like that. But then again, taking that and transition that over to the performance side, very few, the elite, the center of that bullseye is very small. And there's a reason why. Not everybody can fit in there.
Yeah, that's definitely eye-opening to kind of understand and hear it. It makes complete sense. Like over the time, like that you've been involved in like in coaching and rehab and seeing all the different types of athletes come in, all the different types of injuries and things. And like you said, technology has changed, different things are kind of getting added, new research is being found when it comes to rehab and stuff. Like, what do you think has been maybe the biggest change over the course of your time, like within the profession, like when it comes to return to play, return to sport? Because you said coach's eye is important, like
Sure.
testing, quantitative data, but like what is like maybe the biggest thing that really kind of like put this into the next century of like rehab and performance-based training again?
Right. Everyone wants to tell you what they did. Hey, coach, I did this. Hey, coach, is this right? Hey, coach, does this look good? I'm not here to validate those motions. Those are something that you should know how to do already. If you're looking for me to validate those, I could probably tell you that they're not right, or you're just looking for that one set. So that way, when I turn my back, you can go over there and start screwing around again and not doing what you're supposed to do, which we see all the time. With the rehab side, which again, I take everything and it all goes together, including life. I try to get my ACLs back to skipping or running at about 12 weeks. I've done that. This is 30 years I've been in this field. All of our protocols back in the day were 12 weeks. You can return to run, not sprinting, but like a return to run from a post ACL. I've got all the guys at Mayo that are out here really connected with the guys at Mayo. And so I've got a lot of good doctors. Matter of fact, one of my former students, he was one of the residents that just left for his fellowship. He was at Mayo out here. He just left to go take over the fellowship at Stanford. So they're using AI now. It's still doing all the functional movements. They have a new program that he invented to where I can hook it up on, take a video of you on my iPhone, and instead of having to put the sensors on the elbow, the wrist, the shoulder to do all the movement markers, AI picks up these spots and these markers, and then it can show you valgus, vargus, trunk flexion, extension. So it does all this stuff. So technology has come here to help a lot of these people. But what I see myself personally is I don't see that these kids or even my patients are dialed in enough to even get to be running at 12 weeks. And that's really what it boils down to. I've taken my running now, I've made it 16 weeks for my ACL people because they don't work hard enough the first 6 weeks to get it going. They're soft as shit, so they feel pain too much and they don't want to push themselves through. You're going to have to go through some pain to get to the next level. I understand it hurts, right? But for the pain that you're having now, you're going to feel so much better in the future. Take an ACL patient and put them on the table next to one of my burn patients. We're trying to bend the knee just from the ACL surgery, and my other burn patient guy over here is getting his leg stretched, arm stretched, and he's not complaining about pain. So everything's relative. Some of these kids, us as parents and us as coaches, we don't want to try to put coaches a little different, but us as parents, we try not to put our kids in stressful situations. We try to keep them out of that. Well, what happens when you get hurt? You're going to stress. What happens when you go to war? You're going to stress, but they've never handled stress before. So I've got to get them mentally locked in to do from day one. You have to commit to this program. You have to commit to your recovery. I am not doing it for you, and this is not a timetable thing. This is about you now being able to progress from A to B, from B to C. A lot of people want to go from A to C right away. Not going to do it. You can't do that in war. The army, the military. There's steps that you have to take, and it's not because some of it can be strategic, but a lot of it is going to be for protection. No man left behind type kind of thing. So don't leave yourself behind in your rehab because everybody else is going to take off without you.
Yeah, those things are put in place for your own benefit, and there's a
They are.
systematic approach that comes in place, and just like you said, you can't skip those steps, and some people are going to react to it differently. Sometimes you might be at step one, like twice as long as someone else, but maybe your step two surpasses the other person. It's all based off of you, and like you said too, like pain is relative, and
It's
I
relative.
know you've worked with like a ton of different athletes and individuals with varying different injuries that have come into just kind of come through the doors for you.
Sure.
And like, how different is it working with some of those, like the ones with more of those serious injuries that aren't like maybe necessarily athletically driven? Like you talked about burn victims. I know you've worked with some
Yep.
other people that have like some spinal issues as well too. Like, like you got to throw the book out with a lot of that stuff because there's no research on that, I'm
There's
sure.
none.
So how do
Well,
you approach that and work with those clients?
opening up move, and when I was working with Warren and everybody in Rehab Plus, obviously he's got the protocols. This is what we've done. This is functional training. This is the core training. Those are all the terms that were used in the late 90s and early 2000s. And it really is, it's functional. You have certifications, you have classes that are out there. NSCA has their own stuff, CSCA, they all have their own classes. But it wasn't as abundant as it is nowadays. I think nowadays you can take a certification course on every day or every weekend to get out there. So there was only the good guys that had it. So learning from this stuff, a lot of it's trial and error, it's a lot of studying. But again, just because you study our craft of strength and conditioning and sports performance and speed and agility, the biggest thing that I always ask everybody, I understand that you learn something, but is that applicable to what you're trying to achieve with this client, with this patient, whatever? When Eddie King came in, my paralyzed guy, former BMX racer, again, that's how I got hooked at him with the BMX community early on. He was up in Big Bear riding his mountain bike, went over the handlebars, broke his back, fractured T11, T12 spinal cord, woke up. He goes, they took my shoes off and they squeezed my toes. I knew I was in trouble when I couldn't feel it. So they took him to Loma Linda Hospital. Yes, X-rays, broken back. Project Walk and Next Step in San Diego was one of the things that he was going to for his rehab. I reached out to him on Cambridge Medical. If you ever get a chance to come to Arizona, I'd love to work with you. From the BMX roots, it'd be like me right now watching, one of the stars, and I was a mentor. Hey, let me get your gloves or your cleats or your basketball shoe, whatever. That's how I was as a young kid with Eddie. So I just reached out on the whim and said, hey, I'd love to work with you. Well, sure enough, he came wheeling in through the front door and said, hey, I'm here in Arizona. I moved in here with my mom, and what can you do for me? I'm like, shit, I don't know. I've never worked with somebody that's paralyzed in a wheelchair, but I've worked on myself, and I know I'm going to try to get you back because I'm back, right? So, first day, let's try to get the foot moving, right? I'm a big foot person. I've done this for all of my life. I grew up on a bike, and the power gets driven to the pedals and the back wheel from your feet. It's not your core for me, it's your feet. So, my training, even on skateboarding, I've always done the balancing stuff. I've always looked at the foot. Sports performance trainers and strength trainers back in the day, they would look at me and say, bro, why are you doing all this stuff on Bosu balls? Why are you doing everything on one leg? Your shit belongs in the circus. I need you to pick something up heavy and put it down. That's strength and conditioning. Pick something up heavy and put it down. Show how strong you are. But for me, my strength was more control, balancing, unilateral, stability. Now that's what I see the whole field has kind of gotten to. They've gotten away from a lot of strength and conditioning stuff, the strength stuff for the most part, and they're going back now into more unilateral stuff, looking more to balance, developing a good foundation. I agree with them 250% the way it's going. So now as they're going to there, I go back into lifting heavy now. So the whole trend of our field is going to sports. Me specifically, I think our trend of strength conditioning is going more now to corrective exercise. Because I see a big change of all these college coaches. I see the NBAs, the NFL guys, really, they're doing a lot of just corrective exercise to keep the people healthy to be able to get them to play. So working with Eddie, how do I get him doing this? Eddie, how did you learn some of these things about your spinal cord? He's like, man, let me tell you, every spinal cord injury is different, and you got to be self-taught. You have to be self-taught. What works for her is not going to work for me. So at that point in time, I started studying more on the spinal cord. I started more the neurology. I started learning more about the body. I got hooked up with this guy, Roman Reed, who's the head in California of the stem cells research for America with Dr. Hans Kierstead. So I've got some good people in my back pocket. They were talking about stem cells. So now I'm very well versed on stem cell treatments for spinal cord or for any type of the injuries that are coming around. It's knowledge. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. So as I was able to relate the knowledge and give it back to Eddie, we got to become more powerful. I got to get you to take that first step. How do I do that? Well, you got to produce ground force. Well, how am I supposed to do that when I'm paralyzed? The glutes aren't working. So I couldn't get the hip extension with them. So we started doing kind of like if you're doing a hanging leg race, if you're hanging from the bars, your core, your lower abs or your abs can still get you to move your femur up if you can rotate your pelvis to everything using your core. So I got him walking by reaching or using his core, taking the steps in front. We were not walking by pushing behind. We were walking by taking that first step in front. So we just flipped the occasion around. I had him on the ground first like a baby, roll on your back, and then you roll on your stomach. That's what babies do. Then get up on a quad ped, get up on your hands and knees, rock a little bit. Okay, now your hip flexors are engaged, so your lower core is engaged. Can you lift one hand and then drag your other knee up to see if you can get the hip flexor on the other side? We started doing that. He started coming around just like a little baby. Got him up on a 3/4, stand on his knees. Sooner or later, we were getting to walk. So self-taught, trial and error. It's trial on my side and error on their side if they fall.
Yeah, it's definitely a way different approach. And I mean, you talk about foundational, that's way back
Okay.
to the foundation. That's doing research and kind of doing everything that you can on the front end to mitigate the risk. I mean, there is trial and error to it, but
Sure.
you're doing as much as possible to like ensure that that's minimal. And then again, you talked about it with some of the younger athletes and having to extend the rehab out. You have someone that comes in like arguably in one of the worst positions you could be in, and motivated, driven, wants to work, is tough, and look at leaps and bounds of progress that they make in that short amount of time versus someone that's coming back from an injury, like in a surgery that we've perfected over the last couple decades. And like ACL surgeries, like there's guys that play
All
full
day.
careers after that. And you've got someone that's
Yep.
coming back that was paralyzed that is working their ass off to get in that position. So
Yep.
that's awesome.
Well, and having the environment that we do is we take a former athlete or a champion, whatever, that's down, that's broken, that's getting rebuilt, and you put him next to a burn guy who's trying to come back from it all. You know, I look like shit. My bar, I got skins, I got grafts, I got everything on my arms. Hey, but your legs still work. You know, Eddie, sitting over here, man, it sucks being paralyzed, my legs, nah. Hey, but at least your skin's not destroyed. So everything again, it goes back to the same thing. Everything's relative. Eddie was working the same time I had one of my burn guys, Anthony. He was on fire for about 2.5 minutes. I think he got 75% burn of his body. Um, Big oil fire out here, shut down Sky Harbor Airport, and just one of the toughest kids that I've seen just coming through. Young dad, newborn dad. And just, I mean, it's disaster just to see the way when these guys get defeated from the fires or the burns that they had. But every time he saw Eddie, he said, I knew I couldn't complain. Every time Eddie saw Anthony, Anthony said, I knew, or Eddie said, I knew I couldn't complain. So again, we're pushing each other. That's what you need in the weight room. I need somebody in my college weight room to be the leader, right? And so when I see somebody kicking ass, I need to be right next to him kicking ass. If we can get that, everybody feeds off each other. We're all going to be good.
Yeah, feeding off that energy and like you said, like being down but maybe not defeated, and everything's relative, and having those similar people around mindset wise that maybe are having tough days, like you turn it into a team environment when you get into
Yep.
that setting too. And that's a lot of things that are missing from a lot of the training aspects. And it's difficult to do that in the rehab setting because it seems so clinical and uptight of, oh, well, I'm just doing this. Like it's this like vulnerable situation, like you're down on yourself.
Tedious.
But when you do everything like you're talking about, and everybody's like kind of poking at each other, like kind of making them think about what their situation looks like, and hey, it could be worse, you could be this. They're feed into it, driving into each other, and that is positive energy that's been
Huge.
driven back into the rehab.
But a lot of the NFL guys that we had during that time too, they were in it for the offseason. So Cody White was one that he was over at Houston Texans, and it was a contract year for him. So when he's down there, this other guy, Will Poles, they were down there working out, and they're like, man, if these guys can do it, I can do it. So how much does it motivate the abled person too? To see the disabled go. So everything that we did with Eddie, which is what I kind of still talk about with everybody in my clinic here. Don't ever waste a step or don't ever waste a rep. We hear that all day long because Eddie will tell you it could be your last one. It could be your last one. It does happen. So, synergistic.
I love that. Hey, so kind of talking about the clinic and everything too, like
Sure.
you spent a lot of time working at Rehab Plus, like you said, over 30 years kind of experience kind of in all these different realms. And I mean, they all just blend together, which is like coaching wise, physical therapy, rehab, all these other things are kind of blend together. You're just kind of a master of all. Um, so when it comes to that, like what really sparked the interest to create your own clinic and start Move Human Performance and Physical Therapy? Because it's been going on for 8 years now. Is that
Yeah,
right?
yes. Yep. Yeah. 2017, we started. Yep. We opened up. Yep. Well, with Eddie, again, I had Eddie and some of the burn guys that I had. I was at my tail end. Obviously, I did have a little bit of glimpse in my personal life and whatnot. And so I was at Rehab Plus for my last 7 years, doing good. My new identity of me and the drive and the passion that I want to bring to the table as an employee or as a team member was really taking off, and I knew I had a lot more inside me than even what I gave my first 14 years of the whole career. So when I started working with Eddie and I started working with Anthony, I kind of started opening up the mindset stuff. Orange, put it this way, when we had Jamarcus Russell come in town, Jamarcus Russell came in his last year at the Raiders. Obviously, you can go to the Exos out here in Arizona. It's the Taj Mahal. It's got all the bells and whistles, the stretching room, the video game room. At Rehab Plus, it's like Rocky Balboa. We got brick and mortar. We got old school weights. You know, shit's dirty. Nobody cares what you look like. You're going to come in there and you're going to grind. Well, Jamarcus came in, and at that time, Al Davis, he said, you know what? I don't need you going to the Taj Mahal. I don't need you going to Exos. I need you to get down. I need you to get dirty, and I need you to put the work in. Jamarcus, if you're going to do that, this is your last chance. So he came down to work with Warren. Of course, I'm underneath Warren. I'm working side by side. Charlie Fry, his backup quarterback, was there. I'm watching these guys work. Even Jamarcus, lazy, lazy, lazy. We couldn't get him to do anything. This is to salvage his career. This is $19.2 million, you know, and I'm watching this guy just take reps off. Late, you know, I need a bottle of water. The driver was patting the sweat off his head. And I'm sitting here like, man, this is just not it. This is not it. I've got more passion that I want to give. So I started doing more things, and I just kind of felt that I was at a tail end of working for somebody, you know. There was no growth. It was a private company. Warren's done his thing, but again, I was number two in line. Warren was number one. I was at that point where I wanted to try to make my own name for myself. I know I do good work physically. Now I'm doing good work mentally. So I had Eddie. He had Lay-Cap-Perthes disease, so which is a hip dysplasia. Basically, it's a genetical aspect. He was in the process of getting his hip replaced when he fell and broke his back. My last time, obviously, with spinal cord stuff, he has some spasticity, so I'm stretching him. The hip dislocates and it's in my hand when I'm stretching him. And I said, Eddie, I think it's time we got to get this hip looked at. We're not going to be able to walk or progress anymore if we cannot get this hip taken care of. So long story short, we went down to a doctor here, and the doctor said, I need to get you a hip replacement. Perfect. That's what we need. I've looked throughout a whole bunch of databases. If you have a chance, look to see. I've got a fully paraplegic athlete, former athlete, with a hip replacement, and he's still walking. I don't find too many of those. I haven't found any of those yet. So when Eddie got his hip replaced, I told him to go back to Mitch Bruning, who was our therapist there. I said, Mitch, I'm giving you Eddie back so that you can do all the billing, the insurance, and all the therapy stuff with him. And at that time, he looked at me, he said, Chad, you know more about this shit than I do. Why don't you just go ahead and take him? So then I'm like, well, then why am I working for you? And so that was kind of my first assurance of what I had, that like, you know what, Chad, you got this. You got this. So it took some time, took some planning. My wife and I, we sat down. I had some pushing from some other people. I went to go look for some money, some investment stuff, because again, you know, just kind of starting my life back up. The finances were a little rough. My mother and father, they said that we've got some money that we'll lend you, so that way you can move up and running. I didn't want to do it, but I had to put my 2 week notice in. It was the toughest thing because those are my family, those are my friends, and those have been everything I had. So I left that. I opened up Move in 2017. I think the first day I made $75. I had 3 people come in the door. I thought, man, this is a bad decision. This is a bad decision. You know, after the first month, I think I trained like 22 people or something. I'm like, man, this is a really bad. But I started from zero, right? After about the first year, I got so busy doing some training, doing therapy and working on people, doing soft tissue and everything. I was kind of the Uber. I told everybody I'm the Uber to physical therapy. I'm not a cab, so I don't have the yellow cab. I don't have my plaque that says I can go to New York and get in the city. I'm the Uber guy that can get you better. I'm not regulated by insurance. I'm regulated by time, and that's it. You know, obviously certifications, everything help my senior, my backing and everything for protection. But if you wanted to come to me, I'm the guy that can get you better. So I got so busy treating injuries that now I can't even train. So my wife started training people. Right? And she's not a trainer, but she knows enough about form, and she knows about kicking your ass enough, just like any fitness stuff, right? We talked about fitness. So she was training some of those. So it worked out well. A former intern that I had, she decided that we got busy enough. I had to hire a therapist because I couldn't take insurance. That was the only down thing, is I couldn't take insurance. Right? I could do everything on a cash basis, which is what I wish we should stick to. But as it started growing, I needed extra hands of help, and then we needed another avenue to collect therapy money through insurance. So we had a girl, Crystal, right, that came on board, and she was our first therapist that we had, which allowed us as Move Human Performance Center to be a non-provider owner. Right? Because I have a provider inside my clinic now. We're billing it through the licensing of the physical therapist. But now some insurances, now that we have a therapist, that we as a facility were able to get on insurance plans. So again, that kind of helped decipher us and turn us into now a physical therapy / sports training clinic. Growth. Growth.
That's right. That's growth. And it's not unlike the rehabs that you work with too. Like you're kind of you've seen it. You've seen it happen before. You've been in the profession. You've seen other places do it and you go out on your own and now you're trying to figure out what it is. It goes from zero to three in one day to 22 in a month to like now being able to bill insurances and expanding and having staff improve and stuff like that. And that's I think a lot of things that people are missing, whether it's a coach, an athlete, or someone that's going to try to be an entrepreneur and open up a brick and mortar or start a business, like instant gratification, like is
It's
not
not
what you
that.
want. You
That's
want
only on your phone.
sustainability. Yeah,
Yeah, that's only
exactly.
on the phone.
Exactly. But hey, one of the big things that you kind of allude to a lot of the times is like, yeah, you might not have a specific certification. You might not have specific whatever that you need to cover kind of insurance, and you're covering your bases down in different aspects and making Move a one-stop shop for all those things so you can service more people, more individuals that have different circumstances or different means of like payment and stuff like that. But when it comes down to it, like you have people that are almost on one side of the fence, like experience trumps like certifications and education. Like you have people that think education is more experience. Like you have both in different ways. Like which one, like for a practitioner or a coach, do you think is, even if it's not more important, is maybe the foundation of what you should do first to really kind of have a successful career?
Yeah, if we do this all as it should, everybody should go get a job first before they go to college. That's my opinion. Go see if this is what you like. And then the classes become more valuable to you. You get more of an understanding. That's not going to happen. That's a real perfect situation. So, again, knowing at what part of high school, knowing what your self-identity was as a young kid, it's got to stay fluid. It can't just be fixed, right? It's got to stay fluid. So you're going to have to understand before you get to college. I ask all these kids right now, what do you want to do in the future? I don't know. I don't know. They ask you hear it all day long. Business marketing. What do you want to do with that? Well, I want to be a trainer. Well, you don't have to get that. I've got, Kane, one of my right-hand men right now, no offense, exercise science. What is that going to get you? A PE teacher job? That's the basics of what exercise science is. So now you come out of school and a lot of these exercise science people, they want to be a trainer. Very few people are college sports trainers or NFL trainers. There's only 36 teams, and there's obviously a plethora of colleges, but again, there's so many applicants for that. Realistically, exercise science people are probably going to be some type of a fallout. They're going to be a trainer at a gym, a fitness. Well, why would you spend $90,000 to go get that education when you could have just got your certification and then just go hustle and start training people? So I try to make sure people know what you have to have a basics of what you want. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew what I wanted. So it made it very easy for me. Unfortunately, with the trouble that I got into this and that, I wish I would have went to PT school because then I could have done PT right when I opened my doors. I didn't have to pay $85,000 as a salary my third year of business being open. I would have rather put that into my own pocket, but I couldn't do it. So through experience was great and it'll help you get to where you want to be. But there are some careers that you need to have your licenses in and the certifications. If you don't have those, you're going to have to find an alternative way. Thankfully, again, I'm a late 1990s person. I was able to fix through the slip and I was able to get through some cracks and I was able to make it happen. Nowadays, it's very competitive in the job field. It's very competitive. Why should I pay you $85,000 when you went to NAU, for instance, when I can pay somebody that went to AT Still out here in Arizona, which is a prestigious, private college, and they might have more private education. Again, I got to look at the value of what you are by what you did. That comes off my Honeywell guy. When he was at Honeywell, people would come in and they try to get a job at Honeywell. They want $80,000, $100,000. He's like, but you graduated with an education degree, and I got somebody over here with an engineering degree. Yeah, why should I would give you the same amount of money? So obviously, education is very important, very important. Preach it all day long. But at the end of the day, as you get going, it's experience, experience, experience. And for you to continue to keep your continued education up. Right now, there's a lot of tools that you can learn on, a lot of them. So as long as you can keep your continued education, and then you have to be smart enough to know if it's applicable to what you're trying to learn or who you're trying to relate that to.
Right.
Experience and education, key.
No, I love that. And you talked about too, continuing education. Like we're not in a field where it's just stagnant. Like there's always things that are advancing. I mean, just from coaching, from physical therapy, rehab, from working with different clientele, sports, all those different things, from business too. Like
Business.
things are always improving, things are always advancing and changing. And you don't necessarily need to be like on the cutting edge, but you still need to understand that there's progress. And if you're just doing the same thing like year in, year out, you're not getting better, you're getting worse. There's
Yep.
no maintaining for when it comes to these businesses or when it comes to this profession at all. So you always got to be kind of continuing to kind of stay up to date. You have yourself like a staff like you're surrounded with, and I'm sure that's a big part of kind of continuing education because you're collaborating with everybody. But is there any like resource or thing that you really kind of seek or go after when it comes to working with like maybe some of these specific athletes that come in with like these serious injuries or even just kind of business or like where's your kind of go-to
Well,
source?
yes, I'm a younger. Obviously I'm a outpatient physical therapy or outpatient sports performance. So with a lot of the athletes that we've had, obviously I was at the NBA draft 2 years ago. University of Colorado with Steve Eggleman. They brought down the strength and conditioning coach that was down here 2 years ago before Cody went over there. So I always looked and I always talked to my college coaches, the ones that I'm really good with. Hey, what's the latest and greatest over there? They bring down all the high tech tools. They bring down all these new things that the colleges can afford, right? And that's how we got our vault system. I think we were the first people in Arizona to get the vault testing system out because Colorado brought down Steve with his handheld thermometer. Everything's Bluetooth, went to the phone. They tested Cody on his adduction, abduction, hip flexion, knee extension. They tested all the movements. And then they took that back to the sports scientists back at Colorado. And they said his risk for injury in the NBA is 10%, 12%, whatever it is. So again, they take this data, they collect it, they send it over. So seeing that now I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. We should be able, instead of doing the manual muscle testings that my therapists do, what if I could get you this machine that's going to give you actual newtons of output of forces that they have? And then we can track progress and we can track the LSI or the limb symmetry index. We can test to see, are they at that 90% is which the doctors want to return from an ACL or whatever. So looking at those levels, which is good because now I'm resourcing and I'm outsourcing to the upper guys. Well, when we get to the NBA or the NFLs, it's the same stuff. Hey, what are you guys doing there? The Cardinals out here, they're testing the big toe for extension and flexion right now. So a lot of the NFL stuff, they're testing the foot strength, they're testing the big toe. No one's going to think about testing the big toe anymore for strength stuff, but that is because it's the kinetic chain. Everything starts at the ground, right? So if they're testing it in the NFL, well, shit, I'm going to start implementing it here to my high school kids so they can learn to get the jump on it right now and getting the footwork in, which is what we try to do, but they don't understand it. Now, if you test something, they might be able to stand it because these kids nowadays, they want information. They want data, data, data. Everything's driven by data. So it's kind of cool to be able to sit down. So I always looked at the topper levels. Uh, I'm, again, I'm the experienced guy. Warren, when I opened up Move, he said the hardest thing for you is that you're going to have to relinquish control because your therapists, they're doctors of physical therapy. They've got more schooling than you. They've got more knowledge than you in that aspect. But again, you do have the experience. So when I have anything that comes around with my physical therapy team here, or I have a patient, I always ask them first because they're the ones that are licensed. If they want to ask me a question on rebuttal about experience and, hey, what have you seen over your years? Then I can answer it. But again, I let everything go. That's what they're educated for. So that's what helps with our team is we're all delegated. Everyone's got a job that's delegated. So, having a good team effort, which again, coaching staff, right? If you have a good coaching staff and everybody has a delegation, we all come together. We got a good team.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're right too. Like everything is data driven at this point in time, and
Huge.
athletes are gonna, especially this younger group of athletes, they see stuff and it's quicker, and being able to kind of show that it's important by measuring it and showing quantitative data with it, like it goes a long way. And especially when you're working like with younger athletes too, I think more so nowadays, the new athletes that are coming up, they're not really like following teams the way they were before. They're following players. And
Yep.
like when players are kind of like controlling the image and like what they put out on social media and stuff, and like if they're testing, they're doing things. That's why athletes are coming to coaches and are like, hey, I want to do exactly what X, Y, this Z player is doing versus like, oh, I just like watching my favorite team. It's like now it's honed in on a
Oh,
player. So you got to start like thinking about those things and bringing that from the next level if that's what they want to do and kind of incorporating that with them and showing them, hey, if you want to play here, this stuff that we're doing is important. Like that's a pretty quick way to kind of build buy-in with them because they want to be there. That's their goal.
It is. It is. And well, the biggest thing right now, look at all these Achilles tears that we've had in sports. I've got my own theory on it, and it's not just because of Harden or I mean Damian and all the other guys. I look at trainers specifically, and I look at the movement patterns that they put their people in, or even themselves. Even themselves. There's a couple of them that are at a very high level that I have followed. Um, had some relationships with some of them. I know these two specific trainers themselves have both torn their Achilles. And I know now three of their athletes that have also torn their Achilles. So now, are the programs that we're giving them, are they good for what they're doing? Or are we watching what everybody else is doing and then we're going to try to implement that, even though I might have the wrong mission, I guess I might want to be, or the wrong outcome in line? 4-foot loading, 4-foot loading. Everyone's doing 4-foot loading right now because they're trying to isometrically contract or get the Achilles to stay tightened. We know isometrics is great for tendons, right? So everyone's doing a lot of 4-foot loading. Unfortunately, when the foot is neutral or even elevated, for me, this is my opinion on this, the Achilles is shortened, right? I have to lengthen out the Achilles still. They're looking at that negative false step, whether it be from an offensive lineman on a kick step and they get bull rush and their foot comes down. It's a 44% decrease of height of the heel down to the ground. Well, that's where that Achilles is popping, right? So how do we do this? Do we A, strengthen the foot with 4-foot loading so that we keep the Achilles strong? Or do we B, go back in, let's try to get a little bit of elasticity in that Achilles, so that way it can overload any type of an eccentric force that's put upon us when we go to do some concentric and we don't have the foot drop. I studied this. I've watched it all. Me personally, I do a lot of stuff on my heels because I want to take the pressure off of the 4-foot. They're jumping, they're playing all day long on that. So I have to go the opposite of it all, which is almost like in life, I use the word revert commute, right? Reverse commute. Have you ever heard that before?
No.
If I live in, let's say if I live in San Jose, right? And my jobs are all in San Francisco. I've got to commute to San Francisco. Well, the problem is it takes me an hour and a half to get across the bridge, and I've got an hour and a half to get home because everybody's going. So I waste 3 hours of my day, right? Well, at the same time, why don't I try to go like for San Francisco people trying to get in and out? I'm going to go, if everybody's going this way to San Francisco, shit, I'm going to go the other way. Right? All of the training, we have a whole plethora of Achilles things happening. And I see a whole bunch of the 4-foot loading. I go the other way. I take it off in training. I try to unload the Achilles in training, right? They're jumping enough. They're doing enough hiking. They're running up sand hills. They've already got that load on it. I'm trying to develop the elasticity back into that Achilles aspect of it all. So again, it's worked out good for me. I've been very fortunate so far. Maybe it's not the right, but again, I understand what they're trying to do with that exercise, but is it applicable? That's the whole thing. Is it applicable? Basketball players, I think, are on their toes all day long. I try to open it up, but that's me.
No, I see your point of view and like I agree with that too as well. Like you're playing, especially when you get to that level and you've been playing as long as you have and it's repetitive and especially like professional, you've played probably high school, college, you've played so many games, you've played so many practices. Like you're trying to complement the movements and you're also trying to do a little bit of the polar opposite so you can try to fill some of those other buckets because the ones that they're already doing, they're getting to the point where they're just overusing them all the time. And that you, especially in the NBA, I don't know what it is. Like, listen, I love hockey, and
Yep.
those guys play just as many
Dog.
games, and they don't fucking take days off. I don't
No,
understand why the NBA is allowed to play one, sit one, play one, sit one, just play less
just
games.
go. Yeah, just go. Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's preparation, But again, um, when you've got look at the difference of the athletes though that are on the ice and they're on the court, the mentality of it all. For me, how about this? You have to have a high motor. We hear this all day long in hockey and lacrosse and sports. You have to have a high motor. What's the definition of motor? Right? Some people like you have to be able to go from the beginning to the end. My definition of motor is dog times conditioning. You got to have some dog in you, and I have to be conditioned. A dog that's not conditioned is not going to run. He's going to lay down at the fence, right? If you have a dog that's conditioned, he can run all the way up and down the fence, but he never going to bite you, right? So I've got to see who has the dog, right? Hockey players have dog in them all day long. There are some dogs in basketball. We know that in all sports. There's always certain cases, but realistically, are you capable to put in all of that work day after day after day after day? Uh, donate blood, play hockey, right? You hear that all day long, right? I got a kid here. I got a kid here that had broken foot. We got the local hockey kids here. His dad was a heavyweight champ boxer, Sergey Lykovich. So his son now is not a boxer. They're Russian, Belarus. And so now he's like one of the top hockey kids out here in Arizona, which again, this is cool because I get all the top hockey kids in Arizona. They might be good here, but they suck when they get to Minnesota. Well, why is that? Because in Minnesota, they play hockey all day long. Out here, we're sunny. We got the indoor ring. That's fine, but they're skating in the wintertime. They're doing all that. Now, flip the whole thing. I've got all my top swimmers that came out from Minnesota. Hey, I was a state champion in Minnesota. I'm a four-time or three-time state champion. I just moved to Arizona. They get their ass kicked in the senior year in swimming here because that's what we do all day long, right? So, you have to have that dog in you. You have to have that dog in you. And I think that's one of the biggest things. How much do coaches actually, we got to do active recovery today. Let's stay in zone one or no, 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 no. I don't know nobody that takes these times off. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Military, right? The military. You go ahead and take a time off and see what happens when you're at war. There's probably going to be some type of casualty, or there's going to be a breakage of of something. You don't have time to take time off.
Yeah, it's I like that. I like that
Yep.
that formula right there.
Yeah.
It
Dog
makes
times
complete
conditioning.
sense. Hey,
Now here's the thing though, as trainers, right? I cannot train the dog in you. I cannot. I can always train your conditioning though. I can get you in shape all day long. I can have your ass running on the treadmill. I can train the conditioning all day long. I just cannot train the dog in you.
hey, there you go. I mean, some things that just have to come inherent to the athlete, and it's got to be intrinsically motivated, and they got to be driven to do those sort of things. So that's awesome. Like, hey, let's shift gears a little bit too, because I
Sure.
know at the time of this recording, it's right on
Yep.
the cusp. But as soon as this launches, the final preparation, the final launch, and everything will be for your first book. So mine
Yep.
over virtually everything, 10 codes to transform your life. Talk a little bit about that without giving too much away, but like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
what was the start of that? What was the inception? Like why kind of write the book and what can people expect to do, expect to learn when they pick that up?
Well, so when I opened up Move, I left Rehab Plus. I was working with a lady, sweet, sweetheart lady with a bad shoulder. She says, you have to write a book. Just stories, conversation, you get in, you start shooting the shit a little bit, right? And not even just that, but just even knowledge about helping her, the human body, the anatomy, and overcoming things, getting her to do. She's probably 70 years old, things that she never thought she was going to be able to do again. So she introduced me to this lady. Peacock Proud Press is the publishing company that I was with 7 years ago. Sat down with her, told her my story, kind of told her what my goal was for moving, what I was going to do. She's like, oh, this is great. We should write a book. Well, unfortunately, I needed the $24,000 to write the book. I needed that to open up Move. So financially, it just wasn't like, it's great marketing, but with somebody that doesn't have any money coming in right now, I can't market that because I need to take that money and use it for my business. So here we are, opened up Move. We're jamming. I turned 50 last year. I'm 51 now. My wife reached back out to Laura and said, for Chad's 50th birthday, I want to do this book for him. Right. So we started to ignite the fire again. I sat down and had some meetings with her. I wrote it with a ghost author. His name's James Story, just a badass out of Colorado. We hit it off real well. Sports guy. We cheered on sports seasons together. I told him my story, transformation, self-identity as a former athlete, getting into school, the field of therapy, obviously some personal troubles that are in there that I got in trouble with, which is in the book, and then getting back out and helping people at the end of it all, recovering from injury, recovering from sport, whatever. So the 10 codes to transform your life, I use that for business, life, sport, and relationship. There's something in there for every one of those categories. You're either growing or you're dying. You're either growing or you're dying. So in this book, I want to help people grow. I'm not again, I'm a guy that's done it a bunch. I've done a lot of different things. I've done a lot of different things that people normally don't get themselves into, or out of. And so that's in my book. Starts off with self-identity. Then second thing, we're going to talk about choices. Everyone wants to build everything on culture. I don't think culture is the key word to use anymore, which I talk about inside my book. I think it's more character. Because if I have a whole bunch of bad characters and I try to build a culture, you're going to build a bad culture. So I go through step by step. I provide 10 codes. finishes with, at the end of the day, this is not my story. This is about your story. This is what it's all about. I want to get people to go self-reflection. I want them to get people to put, why is little Johnny not playing on varsity? Because remember, which I did a podcast last year, 2 years ago, everybody wants to be a D1 athlete until it's time to do D1 work, right? So these kids say, well, why did I get that D1 scholarship? Well, it's because in seventh grade, when you're down here fucking around and you weren't doing all your reps, I'm notorious for putting my phone out. I'll record a training session. Then when I go home for dinner, I'll count your steps, I'll count your reps and make sure you did it all. I know they didn't do it because I already watched it. Then I go home the next day, or I come back the next day and I tell them, I said, you're not locked in. Your life is not going to be that one. Case in point, we had a kid, an athlete, just bang in, ran into one of our cars in the parking lot and took off. Didn't tell nobody, right? Well, it just happened to be our front desk lady's car that he ran into. So that's character. If you do something, you gotta tell somebody. So the whole book is really based off character, self-identity, from an athletic standpoint of overcoming injuries. I talk about Eddie in there. Arizona Compass basketball. We talked about taking some kids from elite level and making it even more elite. That's kind of when my story came out, because I was working with some of these guys, inner city people and whatnot. And I said, hey, don't, just because I'm white, now I grew up in a good family doesn't mean that I can't get in trouble either. But the way you guys are fighting amongst the team is not what I was going to be able to survive with if I fought with my team. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of key points there. So I spent 16 months writing it. It came out great. October 25th is when it's going to be out. So it'll be out during this time when the show airs. It is great. Pick it up. It'll be on Amazon. Trying to hopefully get into the bookstores. Hardback, paperback. Everybody wants to have the audio book, but to be honest, I want to be on stage speaking. So I want to go through everything. So I tell people, if you want to hear me speak, either A, you got to watch your podcast, or B, you're going to have to buy the ticket to watch me up on stage.
There we go. I like it. No, it's awesome. It's a lot of great concepts and important things that I think would translate to everybody
It does.
in any line of profession, whether it's athletics, like relationships, business, life, sports, all those things are huge. And they transcend all those different things. And you've lived a life like to the fullest in all these different categories. And it's awesome to kind of see it all put together in this book. So
Well,
hopefully a lot of people pick it up.
yeah, chapter 4, we talk about the glass is overflowing. Everybody sees the glass is half empty or half full. Life is overflowing with opportunities if you capitalize and seize them, right? Everyone wants to stay halfway in the cup. You're done if you do that. You got to get outside it.
I like that. That's a good way to think about it. Awesome. Well, hey Chad, like any good training session, we
Yep.
got to end the show with the
Yep.
finisher. So I got 4 quarters, 4 questions,
Yep.
and maybe overtime at the end. But
Sure.
you can go rapid fire, or if there's anything that you need to go into a little bit more detail with, have at it. But you ready?
Sure. Yeah, let's go for it.
All right, first one I got for you. Biggest influence in the coaching clinical profession and favorite athlete growing up.
My favorite athlete growing up, I'm gonna probably have to say John Elway. I grew up as a Broncos fan, watching all the Orange Crush back in the day. So I'm gonna have to say John Elway, favorite fan. My biggest mentor, obviously, my guy Warren. Warren Anderson, worked for him forever. That's my dog. That's my guy. That's helped me get to where I'm at right now. So I got favorite athlete John Elway, my mentor, my guy in the whole sports here, Warren Anderson.
There we go. Hey, so I know you've gone through a lot of sports, you do a lot of different things on the side, but when you're not in move, you're not, now the book's over, like you've done
Now the
written
book's
it.
over.
What are some of your hobbies outside of the weight room?
I read and research. I read and research. I'm a lifelong reader. And like I said, there's research, there's things you can live. I do not watch TV. I call the TV a dummy box. There's nothing you can learn from a TV. I cannot watch sports nowadays because I train a lot of these athletes and I see the lack of, and so it's hard for me to put some supports out there to watch the games. Now I do have the TV on, but I don't sit down as the avid fan and doing it. So I use that time to get better all the time, whether it be phone, computer, whatever. I'm not under surfing the internet. I'm not looking for instant gratification. I'm looking for knowledge and how I can better myself.
There you go. Hey, so might have given it some thought at one point in your life. I know it shifted, but if you had to go down a different path, like at this point in time right now, what do you think you might be doing in like an alternate universe if you weren't coaching?
I'd be working in the ER doing orthopedic surgery, trauma surgery, or I'd be working in the burn unit where I can help all these burn survivors come back from injury. I was just in surgery 2 weeks ago with Mayo, so I saw an ACL, a meniscus, and a peroneal nerve decompression. And but that was I was right in my wheelhouse, scrubbed up, the mask on, cutting bodies, that would I would definitely go back. I'd be an orthopedic surgeon,
All
or
right.
trauma. Yeah,
I think that's a first for that one.
yeah,
Hey, setting up like your ideal training day for you of like if you're in move, you got the place to yourself, you're trying to get after it that day.
yeah.
What kind of music are you listening to and what's your favorite post-training meal look like?
So I'm a Kevin Gates guy. So Kevin Gates, I do listen to some rap in there. It's a lot of some rhythm, soul searching. There's some things good and bad about him, but I'm not a heavy metal. I listened to that growing up in the '80s with all the BMX guys, and I was a young kid and all the hair banging music. So I'll go for that. What was the last part of the question?
Favorite
Oh, my favorite
post-training
post
meal.
meal.
Yeah.
My favorite post meal, I'm not really a meal person. I'm a food person. So for instance, the other night I had chicken breasts, cucumbers, and apples for dinner. Right. So I throw the food group, I threw them all together. If I go for it all, I'm gonna probably have to say some type of tuna fish sandwiches. I'm a tuna fish or fish guy. Anything I can do to get the protein back in. Now with vegetables, I've been eating more celery than I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, just throw that in the tuna sandwich for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Throw it all together.
Last one I got for you for overtime. Like, what is been your favorite part of coaching and maybe your favorite part, like really training and competing like throughout your career so far?
My favorite part of coaching, which is what we do here, I like a lot of the young athletes, see them at the age of 10s to 12s, developing the good foundation for them all, the athletic development of them, setting the foundation so that way when they go to college, they know how to unrack a bar, they know how to rack a bar first thing, they know how to get under the weight and how to get away from it. Most people don't do that. They don't teach the foundation. So for me and the kids that we've had that have gone to the NBAs and the NFLs, watching them grow from a young kid's position and just doing the foundation growth of them all is key. Anybody can work with a professional athlete and say they work with so and so, so and so. They're already professional. I take more pride, can you take somebody from the bottom and build them to be that professional athlete? That's what I pride myself in.
Yeah, what kind of like was your favorite part of like competing? Like what really drove you to like race and skateboard and get involved in all those sports? Like what was the thing that really got you going?
All about adrenaline. I'm all about adrenaline. Yep. Well, we asked a question, which this doesn't get asked much. So we had one of our marketing guys, he asked a question. So why are you an athlete? Right. And we asked all these athletes that were here, why are you an athlete? And some of them were like, I don't know, because I like to compete. Well, can't you compete in life? You don't have to be an athlete to compete in life. Well, I like activity. Okay, well, can't you go do fitness? You don't have to be an athlete. I had one guy, he said, because it's the only time I can chase something positive. Not bad, not bad. So, with these, what challenges you, what pushes you to be that athlete? For me, it's adrenaline. Now, unfortunately, I had to curtail that a little bit when I got to my life because my life stuff, I got a little bit of issues. But again, that was all adrenaline based. So I take it now and bring it back in and try to help everybody out inside.
I love that. No, that's a great question too. I've never heard anybody
Yeah,
like ask it in that manner. I've heard people say like what drives you to be competitive or like what
yeah,
drives you to be successful in your sport, but never just
simple.
why do you want to be an
Yeah,
athlete?
yeah,
That's
well, yeah. So play around with that. Play around with that one. See what you come up with. It's kind of cool
I
to see
like it.
different answers. Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I'll definitely steal that one. Well, hey Chad, I can't thank you enough for coming on today and giving us some of your time. It's been
Nick, I
awesome to chat
appreciate you.
with
Yep.
you. For anybody that's got any follow-up questions, obviously, like let them know again where they can pick up the book, follow you if they're in the Arizona area as well, come by Move as well and kind of pick your brain. Like where can we
Yep.
get you?
We got moved. You got moved, moveperformance.com, our website. Obviously, I've got mind over virtual everything.com, which is for the book, the speaking engagements. Instagram, Chad Dunn 22, Move Performance, also for the move side. You'll see good stories, overcoming things. Twitter, all the same handles, Chad Dunn 22, Move Performance. We just want to reach out. We just want to reach out and keep helping. So the book, Amazon, it'll be available on Amazon. I'm hoping to get into Barnes and Noble and Changing Hands and all the other one stores. But again, this is a whole new experience for me. And I guess you got to start off with the online sales first. Bookstores have to approve your book and approve you to be able to be in it. So, the biggest thing of writing a book, which helps with the trading, they ask me, who are you writing this book for? Which would be something like, why are you trading, or why do you want to be a coach? Because I want to coach everybody. I want to get everybody better. I was told, if you write this book for everybody, you're going to sell it to nobody. If you write the book for one person, you'll sell it to everybody. So it's like trading, right? I'm going to train to one person, right? And if they get right, then everybody want to come and train with you. So again, I got to start off with Amazon, right? Amazon.com, Mind Over Virtual Everything. That's where it'll be available on the 28th.
Awesome. Well, hey, Chad, like I said, I appreciate all the
Yep.
time. It's been awesome to chat with you. I know we
Oh,
could do this for
oh
a
yeah.
long time.
Yep. Keep
But
doing your thing. I love it. Yep.
I
Keep
appreciate
doing
it,
your
man.
thing.
We'll
Yep.
talk soon, and much success with the rest of
Yep.
the business and with the book
Yep.
launch and
Good.
release. Looking forward to getting my hands on it. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
you read it. Read it. Give me some feedback. It's good. It's good.
I got you covered. I appreciate it, man. Take care.
All right. Appreciate you.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com, where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.